Have you ever heard of a war so vast it was fought on 5 continents? A conflict so pivotal it redrew the map of the world and set the stage for revolutions? This wasn't just any war. It was arguably the first true world war. Today we're diving deep into the epic saga of the 7 Years' War, a global struggle for empire that shaped the modern world. Before the first shots were fired, Europe was a chessboard of shifting alliances and simmering tensions. The Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle, which ended the previous War of the Austrian Succession, felt more like a temporary truce than a lasting peace. Austria, led by the formidable Maria Theresa, was bitter over the loss of Silesia to Prussia and was secretly plotting to get it back. France and Great Britain were locked in a fierce colonial rivalry, with their ambitions clashing everywhere from the forests of North America to the trading posts of India. This complex web of rivalries led to a stunning diplomatic reversal known as the Diplomatic Revolution of 1756. For centuries, the Bourbons of France and the Habsburgs of Austria had been enemies. But now, fearing the rising power of Prussia, they set aside their old feud. France and Austria formed an alliance, which Russia soon joined. In response, Great Britain, seeking to protect its German territory of Hanover, allied with its former adversary Prussia, led by the military genius Frederick the Great. The stage was set. The two sides were clear: Britain and Prussia against France, Austria, and Russia. The war ignited not in Europe, but thousands of miles away in the Ohio Valley of North America. Here, the conflict was known as the French and Indian War. Both French and British colonists were pushing into this fertile land. In 1754, a young Virginian militia officer named George Washington led a small force to challenge French expansion. His skirmish at Jumonville Glen and subsequent surrender at Fort Necessity were the sparks that would set the world ablaze. The conflict escalated, with both sides recruiting Native American allies, turning the frontier into a brutal and unforgiving battleground. Back in Europe, Frederick the Great of Prussia, knowing his enemies were mobilizing, decided to strike first. In August 1756, he launched a preemptive invasion of Saxony, a small German state allied with Austria. This bold move officially began the war in Europe. Frederick's plan was to knock Austria out quickly, but he underestimated their resolve. Suddenly, Prussia was surrounded, facing the combined might of Austria, France, Russia, and Sweden. The early years looked grim for the Anglo-Prussian alliance. In North America, the French and their allies won a series of victories, but Frederick the Great proved his reputation as a brilliant commander. In late 1757, facing overwhelming odds, he achieved 2 of the most stunning victories in military history. At the Battle of Rosbach, his 22,000 Prussians crushed a combined French and Austrian army twice its size. Just a month later, at the Battle of Leuthen, he defeated a massive Austrian force in their own territory of Silesia, using masterful tactics and deception. These victories saved Prussia from immediate collapse and cemented Frederick's legend. Meanwhile, Great Britain, under the strategic leadership of William Pitt the Elder, decided to change its approach. Pitt realized the key to victory was to leverage Britain's naval supremacy and financial strength. He poured money into supporting Prussia to keep France occupied in Europe, while focusing Britain's main effort on destroying the French colonial empire. Famously said, "We will win Canada on the banks of the Elbe." The Royal Navy blockaded French ports, strangling their trade and preventing them from sending troops and supplies to their overseas colonies. This strategy paid off spectacularly. 1759 became known in Britain as the Annus Mirabilis, or the Year of Miracles. British forces captured the French sugar island of Guadeloupe in the Caribbean. In India, the British East India Company, led by figures like Robert Clive, decisively defeated the French and their Indian allies at battles like Plassey, securing control over the wealthy province of Bengal. This victory laid the foundation for the British Raj in India. The most decisive campaign of 1759, however, was in North America. The British launched a 3-pronged attack against New France. The climax came at the Siege of Quebec. The city, perched atop high cliffs, seemed impregnable. For months, British General James Wolfe bombarded the city with little success. Then, in a daring and risky move, Wolfe led his men up a narrow, unguarded path onto the Plains of Abraham, just outside the city walls. The French commander, the Marquis de Montcalm, was forced to come out and fight. The ensuing battle was short but brutal. Both Wolfe and Montcalm were mortally wounded, but the British were victorious. The capture of Quebec effectively sealed the fate of New France. A year later, Montreal surrendered, and French rule in Canada was over. Back in Europe, Prussia was bleeding. Despite Frederick's genius, the sheer numbers of his enemies were taking their toll. The Russians had occupied East Prussia and even briefly captured Berlin itself. By 1761, Prussia was on the brink of total collapse. Frederick was desperate, writing that he saw no way out, and came what he called the miracle of the House of Brandenburg. In January 1762, Empress Elizabeth of Russia died. Her successor, Tsar Peter III, was a fervent admirer of Frederick the Great. He immediately pulled Russia out of the war and signed a peace treaty with Prussia, turning all conquered territories. This sudden turn of events saved Prussia from certain defeat. By this point, all sides were exhausted and financially drained. France had suffered devastating colonial losses and was facing bankruptcy. Great Britain had won a vast empire, but it also accumulated a staggering national debt. Peace negotiations began. The war officially ended with two separate treaties in 1763. The Treaty of Hubertusburg restored the pre-war situation in Central Europe. Austria failed to regain Silesia, confirming Prussia's status as a major European power. The more significant treaty was the Treaty of Paris, which completely reshaped the colonial world. France was forced to cede all of its territory in mainland North America. Canada and all French land east of the Mississippi River went to Britain. To compensate its allies, Spain, for losing Florida to the British, France gave Spain the vast Louisiana territory west of the Mississippi. France was left with only a few small islands in the Caribbean and off the coast of Newfoundland. In India, France regained its trading posts, but was forbidden from fortifying them, effectively ending its imperial ambitions there. Great Britain had become the world's dominant colonial and naval power. The consequences of the 7 Years' War were profound and far-reaching. For Britain, the victory was a double-edged sword. The cost of the war and of administering its vast new empire led Parliament to impose new taxes on its American colonies. Acts like the Stamp Act and the Townshend Acts were met with fierce resistance. As colonists argued no taxation without representation, the war had given colonial soldiers military experience and a greater sense of American identity. The tensions created by Britain's post-war policies would directly lead to the American Revolution just over a decade later. For France, the defeat was a national humiliation. The financial crisis caused by the war crippled the monarchy and fueled popular discontent. The desire for revenge against Britain led France to support the American Revolution. It's an intervention that, while successful, pushed the French government into complete bankruptcy. Setting the stage for the French Revolution in 1789, the 7 Years' War was more than just a series of battles. It was a global turning point. It established British dominance for the next 150 years, crippled the old French monarchy, secured Prussia's place among the great powers, and planted the seeds of revolution in America. It was the conflict that truly created the world we know today. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into history fascinating, be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the past. See you next time.